Yes.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're so very thrilled to have you here today as we officially launch the LangOps Institute with our very first roundtable discussion entitled Ready to Go Beyond Localization. And it's been an incredible ride. It's so heartwarming to see so many signups and people interested in this new initiatives. And I think your presence reflects the growing excitement and urgency around the changes that are happening in the language industry. And I'm honored to be part of this transformative moment with all of you. It's very fitting that we have some of the very, very first adopters of the word LangOps here in the room with João and Jochen. I'm not sure who stakes the claim that they are the inventors of this. I think Babel really has a strong argument about that. So maybe we should start with João and have him quickly introduce himself and let us know how this LangOps word came to be at the very outset.
Hi, thank you. I'm João, co-founder and CTO of Babel. Yeah, I don't want to claim that we created LangOps. I think there was a bunch of people thinking about the same ideas. In fact, the same that happened with the DevOps movement, which I think for us was a source of inspiration. And our idea was mostly to try to operationalize better the entire process, especially when you started adding AI to the mix. And there was a huge gap from the people that trained AI models, used AI models, the people that were doing the translation, a lot of handovers, and there was definitely a space to innovate there. And this is where we started thinking about the language operations.
Perfect. We also have a very special guest in the room who is actually a technology guru from the very beginning with Jochen Hummel. He's one of the first ones that was involved with translation memory technology and the original founder of Trados. And you've been interested in LangOps for a very long time as well. Jochen, can you quickly introduce yourself and give us your LangOps background and origin?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Jochen. You already introduced me. I'm quite known in the industry still for being the founder of Trados, although I sold the business now it's 20 years ago, so it's been a while. Today I manage Esteem and Corion. We do multilingual knowledge systems and language factories. And I discovered the term LangOps in an article João has written for Forbes Technology Review, because I was always looking for a good term to describe what we are doing, which goes beyond and was always aiming beyond translation. And I found that term then in João's article and said, well, this is a good term, because instead of having a lengthy explanation what we are doing, I can now say to some American, so I can say it's like DevOps, but for language. So few words and people get what we are doing. So I was very happy about that term. I liked it quite a bit and started to build a bit our positioning around that term. And then the next chapter was actually, and I can pass the word over to Britta, when Britta said at an LTI summit a couple of years ago, why don't we work together and bring a group together and push this concept and formalize it a bit more? And Britta, maybe you tell the story.
Yeah, so I actually remember that at that event, which is for those who don't know it, kind of a nerdy language technology event. But definitely something you should explore. So we had Vasco from Babel also joining us, and I said this, and that was an historic moment already. We decided then also to actually put together a manifesto, like DevOps also has a manifesto, to think about what are the principles. And I think what has from the very beginning has been my main focus is that it did not necessarily speak about localization or translation. I mean, the beyond translation has been there from the very beginning. So we were not looking for which has been a discussion also in our industry, that we are looking, for a replacement of localization or just calling it something else. It is actually a completely different approach. We put together a manifesto that we launched in November 2022.
Pre-ChatGPT.
Pre-ChatGPT, I think a few weeks before.
Yep.
And then GPT happened, and I must say that was even an advancement of that. That accelerated that interest even further. And I could now see that not only as an opportunity for our industry to position us, finally to position ourselves as something far beyond translation, and especially towards a business community that we are actually trying to serve.
Great. Now that we have this historical background, I think we should shift focus for a minute to the new CEO of the LangOps Institute, Arthur Wetzel. And Arthur, I'd love, other than you to introduce yourself, I'd love to hear a little bit what spurred you to start the LangOps Institute and what the vision is behind the Institute.
Yeah. Well, maybe to my background, I worked in technology for 25 years before I even entered the language industry. I became the CEO of 24 Translate, one of the largest LSPs in Germany. And I was always intrigued by, what is that about? I mean, the language industry is not so much not so much digitalized as it should be. There are many things that need to be done. And for me, in my previous career, it was always, and yes, if you count right, I started working when I was 12. No, kidding. When I started when I was in my previous career thinking about what makes things successful, it's always about bringing best systems and best people together. And basically, this is what the LangOps Institute's mission is. But we will elaborate on that later. Jochen and me and Britta and later João, we know each other for years already, and had quite a journey together. And when I heard about LangOps, I was ready to be one of the, I think, second generation LangOps pioneers. And I followed that very, very closely. I also had I was also skeptical at the beginning. So there is one article in Multilingual, which is not so much onto LangOps. Yeah, let's do it. But finally, it was about how do we operationalize these ideas, those ideas. We have this manifesto. We have many great thoughts. We have now the technology. And we have some kind of hard and tough change in the industry. So I think the LangOps Institute will help to, convert that into something successful. This is our mission for that.
Stefan, I believe you're on mute.
You're muted.
There. First technical glitch. Thank you for catching that. One of the things I'm super excited about at the LangOps Institute is that we've brought together such a variety of team members. And Pascale Tremblay is somebody who's well known in the language industry, but actually has been implementing some of these LangOps methodologies for quite a while right now. Although I don't think you were calling it LangOps at the time, Pascale. Why don't you give us your background and vision on LangOps?
Sounds good, Stefan. So, wow, what an emotional webinar this morning. I'm so excited and welcome everyone to be here. So I am probably one of the last one to join the official LangOps movement. Although, as Stefan mentioned, for those of us in the language industry that have been building language and localization programs for a very long time, when we hear about LangOps or what the LangOps approach is, it feels very much like, oh, but that's what I'm doing. And that's so when Edwin and Arthur reached out and started talking about LangOps, that my first reaction was like, wow, this is what I've been doing and this is what I've been building. But to Britta's point earlier, there was no formal vocabulary or narrative to talk about that. And when you're in the client side, trying to convey the true value of the work you do is very complex because executives, they don't really want to hear about translation. They don't want to hear about localization. They want to get the job to get done. And so even in my, as a former head of language product and localization services at the Gap, when I had conversation with my executives, I never really talked about translation. So when I started looking into the terms LangOps, it was clear to me that it really encompassed the work that we do today. So I'm very excited to build this institute and to really bring that knowledge around for everyone in the industry.
Last but not least, we wanted to have an academic localization technical professional in the group here this morning as well. Arle, you've been working on localization technology for a very long time. You work for CSA Research for the time being, and you have knowledge about a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today as well. Can we have you introduce you real quickly? I almost curled my mustache this morning, but I decided not to be disrespectful. So go ahead.
Well, some people might believe it makes me look villainous, so maybe it's a good thing you didn't. No, so I've been involved with the language space, language sector since 1998, way back in the days of the Localization Industry Standards Association. And one thing that I can say from that entire time that we've seen a need for is really moving towards allowing language services to operate as an enterprise function. And there's always been obstacles. And in some ways, we're rehashing discussions from 20 years ago. It's like Pascale said. Sorry? Can everyone?
No, sorry, there was keep going.
Okay. So yeah, as Pascale said, she was already doing this, and in some sense, yes, but there needed to be a way to convey what the value of this is to enterprises. And then as we're moving into what at CSA Research we call the post-localization era, this is really spreading out in the organization. It's no longer, one little department that does this off in isolation, that, can't be accountable. It's spreading out in the organization. And once you do that, you need some serious enterprise discipline. And that's why, we saw the term LangOps at CSA Research and said, yeah, this fits in with the idea this has to be an enterprise discipline.
Very interesting. The way I would like to conduct the rest of our session here this morning is I've prepared some questions that might or might not be somewhat thought provocative. I would like it if we make it a discussion, and it's not necessarily one person that needs to or is asked to answer the question. If you feel so inclined to contribute to any of the questions, please do so. The first one that I wanted to lay on the table is this. As of late, maybe the last 2-3 weeks, we've seen several posts on LinkedIn and articles. I think, Arle, you kicked up some dust last week with a LangOps post, and so did Don De Palma. We had articles come out by Arthur and Jochen in my AI and Loc newsletter that garnered quite a bit of attention. And some of the pushback we've seen is that people don't necessarily agree with LangOps being something different than traditional localization. And I was wondering whether any of the panel here would be interested in shedding some light on that and addressing how LangOps is different from the standard localization terminology, so to speak. Pascale, do you want to take a stab at that?
I'd love to. So I think when we think in terms of LangOps, so the first difference that we need to take into consideration is that we recognize that the work localization teams do is not just translation, it's beyond. And so that's very critical because it starts reframing the conversation for what we do. And then, and earlier, as I mentioned, this is something I was already doing, but it's been such a gradual progress over the years that, it got embedded within localization. However, as the localization program matures, it becomes impossible to confine it to the localization program because, for example, before digital transformation, a localization team was dealing with specifically like tangible files. If you were doing marketing, you had to package your file. You saw the text. Everything was very tangible. But as your organization matures in that digital transformation, the work of the localization team becomes more about those fragments, those data points that you actually have to transform into some output. So when you start looking at this gradual transition, which is becoming much more accelerated now with generative AI and the new use cases, you realize that, whoa, the work I do has very little to do now with translation. It's about really operationalizing and really enabling that data flow across your organization system. And then the localization team has to spend a lot of time really concentrating their efforts around orchestrating, around integrating all those systems so that the data can flow and talk to each other. So LangOps is not just a name change, it's a fundamental mindset shift that really represent what we actually do. And eventually it's just going to get more and more complex as enterprise ecosystems get more complex. So it's really to help get out of that localization box and start reframing and building that framework for the future, which I love to talk about. It's a language framework because we have to anchor what we do as a layer in the organization.
I like to explain it.
Go ahead.
Okay. I like to explain it with the LangOps principle number 1, which is understand all customers. So I think in the localization industry, and if you see some tech lines, it's about of helping companies to be understood. So they have their content, and of course the content needs to be translated to be understood. But if you change this passive to active voice and say we help companies to understand their customers, suddenly the applications and use cases we have to support is so much broader because we have to support then language agnostic search, social media, multilingual chatbots, competitive analysis, and so on and so on. Basically any application which involves textual data, because for any bigger company, textual data is always multilingual. And that shows the wideness and the broadness of the applications and use cases we have to support. And obviously, translation is an important component in all this, but not necessarily because you have to translate everything, but because in translation you generate the linguistic assets which support the automation of these activities. So for good reason, we made this the principle number 1, understand all customers independent of the language they speak and being able to communicate with them and not only being understood.
And I just want to add to that as well, and even lifting it, and with that also coming out of maybe the translation box or the localization box, which maybe merely focuses on the services as such. For me, LangOps really addresses the way that organizations most effectively can manage and leverage, any enterprise knowledge that exists somewhere in the organization in the form, as you said, Jochen, textual data, and how most effectively to use that. And then, of course, it becomes significantly more complex when it becomes multilingual. So from this more narrow use case of localization, I think if we describe that to the business users, as you said, Pascale, then it is a matter of actually building the infrastructure for all these kinds of globalization, AI, any purposes and initiatives in the enterprise.
Very interesting. Arle, LangOps, just another fancy rebranding of translation, or what's the academic view on this you perceive? Yeah, I think you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think Jochen's really given the answer to that, because if you look at the tasks Jochen mentioned, you should be doing those things even if you aren't translating. And it's this discipline about controlling the content. Yes, it facilitates multilingualism, but if it's about understanding customers, there's all sorts of non-textual adaptations you have to manage. You might deal with sign language. All sorts of other things could fit in this that you would never go to somebody who says, I'm a translator for, because they wouldn't have a clue how to deal with it. So the goal here really is to treat this content as an enterprise asset that needs to be managed, yes, across languages. And yes, translators will do their thing. And I think actually this helps elevate translators by helping them focus on what they offer. But it can't just be translation, because most of what you're doing in this isn't translation.
João,
Absolutely.
go
Yeah.
ahead. Pascale,
Oh,
you have
I'd like
something
to,
to add?
yeah, I'd like to add, the thing is, when we think in terms of from the client's perspective, the language framework is agnostic. So you're building a framework so that you can enable data. And so and because it needs to be at the core of the ecosystem, because the data flows from one system to another, from one application to the next. So when you think in terms of every enterprise will need to have some sort of language framework layers to help with processing the data, curate the data, annotate the data. And so this, if you're mature right now and you have enabled that data flow for sentences, for content that is still very tangible to the eye, then it's a gradual evolution. But if you're working without an anchor that is a language framework within your organization, then this is where you need to pivot and where the challenge will be greater for the enterprise. Because in the advanced digital age, you're dealing solely with data, so you need to be able to anchor that data. And I've seen in some of the comments, but what about presenting it to the exec, or what about the conversation internally? Well, that conversation is just going to be very important, and it's still going to be a challenge for the LangOps team to also provide the value. But if you have a new framework that you can work from and really highlight the value that you're bringing, then it's going to be helpful to really put that at the core of the infrastructure. Because when we think about it, language is embedded in everything, so that linguistic data is going to need to flow across every system, whether you're talking to your customer, whether you're talking to your employees. And this is where we're going to see also a shift from content and also from the source language, because it's going to collapse together with the data management of those linguistic assets.
I have a question for the software industry, software providers here, João and Jochen in particular. How do you see LangOps evolving in the next 5 years? Maybe João can start, and then Jochen can give us his version.
I mean, I think LangOps is going to start moving away from localization only. I think what Pascale was just talking about, LangOps is about like managing the data. If you think about translation, was about taking a piece of text and guarantee that the customer got the right translation, and there were some steps in the middle. Language operations platform is much more about assessing the content, where the translation is just one transformation, and there's AI involved. And I think that with the advance of LLMs, you can now do much more tasks than you could do before. So you can do like transcreation, you can do content generation. So I think you're going to start seeing a LangOps platform allowing a user to do content generation and actually representing information that they want to use, and then allow to generate content for blog posts, for LinkedIn posts, all from the same source. And in that sense, those are all transformations. Translation is just another transformation. And once you start doing that, then there's a merger between content creation, localization, and you start getting up on the hierarchy of the company. So you start being more important. So you kind of push entire language operations up an organization, and it's easier to communicate with the stakeholders. So I think that's what you're going to start seeing with language operations.
I mean, with Gen AI, we have now an extremely powerful tool which helps us with that transformation João has just described. But it doesn't work in isolation. It doesn't work out of the box. I always compare Gen AI a bit like a junior, or by now maybe a half senior employee. And everybody, even the senior employee, needs access to information, needs to know how things are called, how have certain things be defined, how do we, what is the tone, the style, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a lot of information which, of course, an out-of-the-box system doesn't have. But in LangOps, we maintain linguistic assets which enable then Gen AI to do the transformation specific to a company or specific to a domain. And I think that's also how our role, the role of linguists and translators, will evolve. Instead of spending most of the time to doing words to translate text to be involved in the transformation, I think more and more our role will be to enable LLMs, generative AI, to do the job the way the company or the domain requires. So I think us as software providers, we will provide the tools and the workflows in order to maintain these linguistic assets, to make them accessible, curatable, and also to expose them then or make them consumable by machines, by LLMs, and by other components, so that they can make use of it.
Mm-hmm.
Very well.
I think I'd like to add one thing here, Stefan, is that when you're on the client side, we often talk about how we're connecting the dots for every team's, every function when we package our localization projects or when we do this and that. So I think when we think in terms of LangOps, we can think that, we're connecting all the dots that is related to linguistic data, but in the systems. And then the role becomes to enable and orchestrate all that data to flow accordingly. And if you're in a retailer, for example, even before ChatGPT, you see that in an ecosystem that where the data is all linked together and language is critical for the output on an e-com site, it's directly tied to your revenue. So the criticality of being higher up from a strategic level is no longer in question because your input within that system becomes critical for the revenue. Because if it fails and you don't have the proper process in place, then you're losing money directly. And we're going to see that more and more as we're advancing into that AI environment.
Britta, I have a question for you. Why do you think it's so important for the language industry to adopt LangOps? Why is it crucial?
Yeah, I think tying into what you have just said, Pascale, and also Jochen, and I also saw some of the comments there. How did we get here to this, that we have become an industry that is commoditized in some way or other? And I have said so many times, I think we unfortunately we have commoditized ourselves a little bit. I also blame Jochen because he invented Trados and basically with that the per word rate model was also invented, and I remember that Jochen also shared that it was not just the software product that you brought to market, but it actually became a business model. And I think this is something that we have been suffering now for decades. And the importance here is, as we said, we have the opportunity to change the narrative completely so that we can make this shift from services to actually being an important part of the data infrastructure that you're describing, Pascale. And also, we see that the word weights, they are going towards zero at least. I mean, this is just a fact that machines will produce more and more of the words. So we have an opportunity here to actually shift our business models and move away from what we have been doing so far. And for me, this is a huge opportunity that we can be in the strategic discussions, because we actually leverage technology in a way that is, to your point, Pascale, that is, we can see it has P&L effect on the businesses, and that is what the executives are looking for.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. When I think back in my, C-level times, well, still there, but in other industries, it was always an afterthought to think about language. So everything was produced, and then somebody took care of, translating or localizing software or whatever. I think it's time that language should be understood as a strategic layer, which goes, really throughout the company, and is and therefore also levers, yes, the P&L, also the balance. I think a company that is able to speak 80 languages and understand 80 languages in real time is much more valuable than a company that speaks 5 or 6 languages, or 14, which is I think the normal. The normal, I'm sorry, which I think is the average, and there has to be a paradigm shift in the executive management, and I think they're ready for that now that they understand that AI is there, and what better can you serve than language with that. And also, when I look back, to some conversations with people at the Deutsche Telekom, so they were just saying, okay, in 5 years, and I think it was 5 years ago, and in 5 years, every first customer contact should be a bot. Well, the Deutsche Telekom chatbot is really bad, but of course it's evolving, and if we look into this, real-time interactiveness that we are looking for, and this in a multilingual or language independent environment, that's the right way. So what I'm saying here is LangOps already there. You're just bringing together the right people and also the right systems.
I love to involve the audience whenever appropriate, and we got some really high-profile visitors here with us today. My good friend Erik Vogt is here, and he knows a thing or two about technology development in the language industry. Erik, you had a question for the panel that I think is really, really relevant. I have it written out here. I can read it for you, or you can unmute yourself and ask it yourself. That would be my preference, but let me know.
Well, I asked several questions in our active dialogue.
Go ahead,
here.
fire them off.
But
I know they're going to be good because you're the kind of guy that's really interested in LangOps, I'm sure. So go ahead.
Well, I think LangOps almost describes the fundamental challenges with organizations connecting different parts of themselves into a coherent value proposition. So I think in general, you're focusing on the language layer, but organizations generally have this problem overall. But I think one filter that I'm trying to sort of think through is, what are the consequences of not solving this? And I guess the perspective here is not so much that good project management or good leadership or good business management shouldn't address some of these fundamental problems on their own. But I think what LangOps is proposing is that if you don't look at it systematically from a language layer, you're leaving money on the table. And can you quantify at some level what that means? And I think fundamentally, kind of the Trados ecosystem assumes that English is the best baseline for delivering value to other locales. And I think the premise is that it's no longer the case, especially with Gen AI on the table, that we can generate content in locales that is better suited to those locales than translating the English segment by segment in the traditional localization model. That's just one of many ways that we could break down this chain. Another one, I think, is the listening, the social listening, and integrating marketing signals into your brand relationship with your in-country customers. That having been said, all of those two are just two ideas of a more tangible approach of how you break down the barriers to delivering better value for your in-country, for other country brand. But is the fundamental challenge is complexity. I mean, you're dealing with multiple systems, multiple teams. Those different teams don't necessarily even like each other or want to work together. Marketing wants to do its thing. Somebody else wants to do their thing. Efficiency is compromised with complexity.
What are
And
the
Eric,
specific inefficiencies in the current workflows of LangOps that we stand to solve? Pascale, you had an answer on that.
yeah, so Eric, I wanted to address that because I mean, coming from one of the biggest retailer in the world, it was about creating a language framework that can incorporate 4 global brands, several global offices. And not only that, we had to create also a framework for employees around the world. So the range of use cases was incredibly tall. You could have project that span over 12 months. And then when you go to the e-com and the marketing side, you have projects that have to be delivered within 30 minutes. So that range was incredible. So part of the evolution of LangOps is early on in my career, I started building an agnostic language framework that can also function as the anchor for the language processes within your enterprise. So yes, for example, 10 years ago when we adopted a TMS, the TMS was the center of the localization team. But as we move into a world of data, that TMS can no longer be the center. You have to move within the infrastructure of the company in order to embed all the functions. So you still have to work with a TMS and other tools, but those are, so this is a big shift, like where for some of those programs that had a very mature localization program, that TMS was the center, but now you have to move within the center of your corporation and really embed all those programs. And the framework must be agnostic, so you can deliver in any language you want. And so, yes, it's very complex and it's going to require a lot of work. So, and this is why I'm so excited that we're putting that institute together, because it's going to take a village. And we, as an industry, you need specific features to be able to work together. Interoperability is, I mean, every industry talks about interoperability because the new goal is for the data to flow across all the systems. So yes, it's going to represent a lot of work. But I wanted to also add, though, one aspect of LangOps that we haven't touched in why it's so critical to reframe the conversation is not just because we're building a language framework, but it's also impact everybody in that language chain, because the work that a translator does today is completely different, and they're expected to be paid the same as if they did a translation. But the more the machine output is more fluid, the greater the work for the translation is. So in having a proper framework to really explain what we do within an organization and how it impacts everybody along that chain will also help compensate people more adequately, or at least this is an attempt, because if you're doing MT output or if you're doing generative AI output review, the work is, you're not translating, you're not just reviewing, you're looking fundamentally at the expertise needed to talk about the content. So for me, it's about, yes, the language framework is very, very complex and will require a lot of work, but it's also going to help everybody along the way because everybody's work within that chain has changed.
Arle, do you have any visibility on that from a research point of view as far as the inefficiencies that the current workflows can solve or can be solved by LangOps?
Yeah, we certainly do. There's I mean, some of it goes back to the old interoperability stuff that's been discussed already and has been discussed in the chat, but there is a need to solve these issues to make sure that data flows between all of the different systems. And so that starts involving teams that are outside of the localization groups and getting them on board. Even if you can solve the interoperability issues, then there's things about, is the data itself compatible? Is there the metadata that surrounds it? Because often that gets lost. So you have some sort of instruction, some sort of essential knowledge, and it's lost if that's not actively managed by all of the systems. And so then it's not there when you need it. To take another example, we see is that years ago, a large tech company did a study, and they found that about 30% of what they wrote and localized had already been written and localized, and they couldn't find it. And so without systems to track this that are then really integrated, you end up with tremendous churn and inefficiency. And if LangOps lives up to its potential and solves this, it's going to be a huge benefit for organizations.
Yeah. Jochen, I was thinking about your article yesterday as well, and you talk about it. Certainly, structured data has been a big part of your solution at the very beginning, but now we're at a point where unstructured data can play just as big a role, and I think that's a big issue in your item in your list of things that make you think towards LangOps. Can you shed some light on that, maybe, for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, of course, LangOps is just at the beginning, and the vision of being a language, providing a language framework or a language platform for a whole company is very, very bold because it involves so many people. But high level, I always say half of the data is numerical or can be put in tables, and we are good at that. And we put this stuff into ERP systems, and we are running our companies already for decades on it. And the other half is textual. And basically, the way we deal with textual data is with humans. So we have meetings, we send emails, we do calls like this and so on. And with Gen AI, for the first time, we have the tools to also deal with the other half of the data. And so now we have tools which can help us to transform, summarize, translate, or do whatever with this data. But in order to make this manageable for a company, we need linguistic assets, we need linguistic resources. And the incredible opportunity for our industry is that we produce a large part of these linguistic assets in many languages to do this. We also understand this data. We have the knowledge and the networks, and we know the experts who can fill missing languages. So we bring a lot of the knowledge to build these linguistic assets and to provide this framework. And that's an incredible opportunity. Instead of sticking to the translation box, which I think will soon go away because Gen AI can do this, we should move towards providing these linguistic assets and building the applications, building the systems, creating the data, so that the other half of data, the textual part, can finally become a productive assets for companies. It's bold, but that's why we are here all and start the LangOps Institute. And that's why we started langops.org 2 years ago, because I believe that that future is a great one, and companies who will deploy a LangOps strategy will prevail. And for us, there will be a lot to do in providing the technology, in providing the services, in providing the applications, in consulting companies how to do that.
Yeah. Of course, we've been talking about 45 minutes about all the changes in technology and what they mean for the language industry, but there is a lot of linguists and translators in our industry that are currently also wondering about what the future holds. And that's particularly one of the reasons that we wanted to start the LangOps Institute as well, to give everybody in the industry a future. Arthur, could you tell us a little bit more about what your vision is about the people and the linguists involved in the industry and what they will be doing shortly?
Sure. Thank you. So when I started in 24 Translate, I was I was amazed about the quality and also about the social competence of the people that work in that very industry. So especially linguists, people that are working in the project management, or even as translators, specialized translators, highly specialized translators, or transcreators, etc., etc. So maybe on this level they are not so much endangered, but I hear a lot of people that are really very much concerned about what the future is all about, and if they can stay translators. Some people also take out a bold statement and say, no, we don't need translators at all. I totally disagree with that. But I think it's about new roles. So I mean, the amount of content that needs to be provided in the next years will be uh, out of everything. So nothing where we really can manufacture human translations on, etc., etc. So we really have to industrialize it, and also put other systems in place. And we already talked about that, and we will learn, in the next sessions we will learn what that could be. But I'm really concerned, or I'm happy to offer for those people that today think that they might not be a future for me in that industry. I totally disagree. I think that there will be much better jobs, also much more interesting jobs. There might be different to translating from A to B, but it will be the role of multilingual knowledge manager. It will be the role of data curators, etc., etc. And maybe I can involve Jochen again, because he made up his mind, because he's already working on this language factory project, which needs several people that have different roles and that need to be upskilled in that sense.
Yeah, right. I think there will be new roles, and I think these roles are more interesting. Okay, that's a personal opinion, but I think also they will create more value, because the results can be easily multiplied. A translator, even with the best tools, can only do so many words. But if you create multilingual knowledge systems, if you create content repositories, if you provide training and tuning to LLMs, you multiply your knowledge, and basically you can multiply it 1,000 times or 10,000 times. So I believe these new roles will be more challenging, more interesting, but also they will create more value.
And I'd like to add here, we've been talking at a high level about the future, the advanced digital environment. And so this is really the vision and the bridge we're building to. And we fully understand that not every organization is as far or as mature in the digital transformation. And this is why, with the LangOps Institute, we're going to provide also adjacent knowledge, so that people who are in organization where the digital environment might not be as mature as others, they have the tools and they can initiate and drive change internally and build what's a LangOps language framework. And that's very important, because for prior to think in terms of LangOps, people who built modern and mature program had to learn at a much slower pace, because they had to discover, they had to implement new things, and there was no framework to work from. So now we're trying to help these professionals accelerate that learning curve and give them the tool and the adjacent knowledge they need to drive change, to also initiate change, and to what does it mean when you have to sell your strategy to other team and cross-functional team. How can you be more effective? So this is all part of this LangOps Institute, to provide that adjacent knowledge, because we realize that the tier program that we've been talking about, it's a minority right now in our industry. So we're building a knowledge bridge for them to get there, because as with the release of generative AI, it's getting more and more noisy within these environments. So it's important to put in place the proper language framework for more efficiency.
Speaking of building bridges, how do you envision the LangOps movement reshaping the partnerships between clients, LSPs, and technology providers, Britta?
Yeah, I think we touched upon it a bit, and I also think that we talked about here defining roles, maybe also for translators or others. But I also think that there will be a new landscape of technology service providers and other in this ecosystem. It will basically redefine how we work together, because the business model will change, where localization, as we said, is maybe a subset of what we're trying to achieve, the global customer experience in that. So we will have different weight and roles in that. I don't think that being maybe a small LSP today is necessarily a disadvantage if they can play into that overall framework. On the contrary, I mean, maybe it requires specialization, but or more or some niche expertise. But I think if you embrace this and understand that this is actually a very, very highly complex framework, then there is a place for also the small players or smaller players in this.
Mm-hmm.
Good. We've already filled 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? It went by
That's
just
crazy.
like that.
That's
We're
like-
going.
That's crazy. And
We could
some
easily make this 2 hours, but we know people need to get back to work. So I want to go around the room and do a final round on what you think is the most exciting thing about LangOps in the future. João, you haven't spoken in a while, so I'm gonna call on you first. What are you most excited about LangOps?
I mean, as I mentioned before, I think the LangOps extrapolating from localization, and also I'm looking for I'm going to call it the first true LangOps platform that supports what we want to achieve with LangOps in the world of LLMs and treats data as a first-class citizen. I think that's going to be very exciting. I think there's a lot of companies building a LangOps platform. I want to see like the first one. I think it's going to be super exciting.
Very well. Arle? Oh, your sound is off again.
What really excites me is the downstream implications of this, that if organizations are able to actually listen to their customers and understand them, they're going to stop shoveling crap out at them, and they're going to give them what they need. And I think that's just a net benefit for humanity.
Right.
Very well. Jochen?
Well, I'm a software guy, so I'm excited to make all this high-level talk tangible in capabilities and products and linguistic assets and databases, and provide the core to LangOps.
Good. Britta?
Yeah, I need to say it again. I'm excited about the opportunity for us also in this room, language professionals. I think most of us are in the language industry. An amazing opportunity to change the narrative dramatically, and actually show that what we have been saying, that we have been one of the first to adopt AI. I think we can really show that it can make a huge impact on businesses.
Very well. Pascale, I want to ask you a follow-up question. Other than what you're most excited about, I also would like to know what initiatives the Institute is working on to serve the different communities that we are looking to reach.
Thank you, Stefan. Well, so, we're building our LangOps Institute around building a knowledge hub, a community. And as such, we're going to be partnering in the industry with experts to help teach various topics. Actually, one of our first community partnerships is we're partnering with Talia with Global Saki. So we're going to offer complementary courses to really help build the adjacent knowledge needed for leaders and actually not just for leaders, for everyone within the industry. When we think in terms of the advancement of AI, what's very important for each of us is really to cultivate that knowledge and what makes us really unique and bring those unique human attributes to the table. And this is really where we're going to thrive between the human and the machine. So at the LangOps Institute, yes, we are very much about building that knowledge community and bringing experts along so that everybody can benefit, because this is a tremendous opportunity for our industry to drive change and really elevate the conversation. But if we don't take that opportunity as an industry, I mean, other people will, because you have to have that language framework within your organization. Otherwise, when you try to operationalize AI, and it's going to be very problematic. So I'm very excited about the LangOps Institute and building that knowledge community and working with all the segments in our industry.
Arthur.
Thank you, Pascale. Sorry,
Oh,
I can't. I can't show my face right. I mean, I can't put the video on, but good stuff, and looking forward to our partnership.
Thank
Cheers.
you,
Hi.
Talia. All right. Arthur.
Oh, yeah, maybe it's on me for the famous last words in the next 5 minutes. So I'm super excited to, get all this done, and I might give you a broader overview. Yes, we are educating people in several levels. And several communities. We will be offering an LSP program which will transform LSPs into content and knowledge companies. This is something that we are doing right now. Then we are also certifying technology. So if we are, meaning that if we have certified people with certified technologies, they might be there's much more efficiency for them to work together and serve client needs, and we're also working with clients. So there will be case studies about where LangOps is already happening, and it is. And there's a lot of news to be coming, and this is something that I would just want to emphasize. I was following the chat. I was super amazed about that. There were, I think, 195 people. This was the number that we hit today, and the input that I saw was great, and also the answers, also the question of can we join, or can we work with the institute? Yes, you can, but we are right now. We are a small team. We started 3 months ago, more or less to build it up with a high discipline, and we were very, very focused to come to that point that we are talking about right now, because this is our official launch event. So we will have our first courses soon available. We will have programs and case studies and information and research thanks to CSA. We will have probably our first event in the US.
Our second event. This is the first one, Arthur.
This is a live event. So I was no. We will have this roundtable, I think, every month or something like that, and I'm very very much looking forward to be working with all of you, and we will keep you informed. So you should really go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, so you're really informed. But we are also in LinkedIn. We're also thinking about vitalizing the LangOps Global Network, which is a LinkedIn group. So many things to come. And I am and I cannot be more thankful for that. to have this team at the LangOps Institute, which is Pascale. So cheers, Pascale. This is amazing. Stefan, you are Mr. Marvelous, and and of course all the LangOps pioneers and the LangOps founders that we have on this panel. I cannot be more thankful for that. But I know that we are doing something good for the community, for the industry, and for the economy. That will be very, very vital, and I'm very, very happy to do that.
Awesome. I think you put a very nice bow on our event this morning or afternoon in Europe. We're in all different time zones. Thank you so very much to the panelists, Arle, Jochen, Britta, João, Pascale, Arthur. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I did my best to give everybody the same amount of time, but it's usually an impossible job. But you were very, very valuable, and your help is really appreciated. We thank you, and we'll see you soon again for another roundtable at the LangOps Institute. Thank you very much.